Bus trip.
Oh, I'm sorry about this, everyone, but there is going to be a slight delay in our trip.
Sean Howard heard the moans from the 27 passengers seated behind him. He understood their trepidations, and he himself wanted to moan and groan. However, as the driver and representative of Blue Trail's bus lines, he tried to act as professional as possible.
What's going on, Sean?
The bus steward, a girl named Grace Williams, was standing beside the driver's seat, whispering to Sean. It was her job to make sure that the passengers behaved, had their proper tickets, and most importantly, answer any and all questions that anyone may have. This was her first trip with Sean, and she didn't want anything to go wrong. Obviously, something had.
Well, Miss Williams, I really won't know that until I get out,
he told her as politely as possible. She smiled and moved aside as Sean opened the doors and stepped outside. He had been driving for Blue Trails for almost 10 years now, and not once had he had an incident on the bus. Every run that he had made had gone off without the slightest hitch or bump in the road. For the past 3 years, he had been designated as the safest driver the company had ever had. It was quite an accomplishment for the 35-year-old who had never thought he would become a bus driver. He had only taken the job as a last resort. He had wanted to work in the construction field, but health problems had prevented that. He soon learned that driving had been not only enjoyable, but he felt that he was accomplishing something important. He had decided that someday he would eventually own a fleet of buses and be able to relax and enjoy life. He would start his own company and become direct competition with the major services. The air was cool and still on the lonely road that he had had to take due to an accident somewhere on the highway. The policewoman had given him very specific directions, and he had followed them to the letter. It was a little funny, he thought now, that no other car or truck followed him down the 2-lane blacktop. There were no houses or businesses lining the road, and there had not appeared to be any off-roads that led to subdivisions or other small communities. As he walked around the bus, he checked for leaks under it. He found the problem in only a few moments.
I'll be damned,
he muttered as he inspected the 2 blown tires. They were completely shredded, with no way of patching them.
Why the hell could have caused that?
Grace asked as she walked up behind him.
Well, I thought I felt a bump in the road, but didn't think that it would do that, he told her. Looks like someone took a large knife to them.
So what now?
Grace asked. He turned to her and said,
Well, according to protocol, I radio in for another bus for the passengers and a tow. Or they may send out a repair truck. Otherwise, we're stuck until they get here.
No one is going to like that,
she groaned.
Don't worry,
he reassured her.
I will tell them.
The moon had risen high in the sky, bathing the road in a ghostly light. At least it wasn't wintertime, when there would be at least 2 inches of snow on the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Sean began on the intercom.
It looks like we're stuck here for a little while. The company thanks you for your patience. If you would please remain on the bus until help arrives, it would be greatly appreciated.
More groans came from the passengers, all 27 of them. Sean reached for the radio and began to call in to his dispatcher.
This is 5151 calling dispatch,
he said. Nothing but static greeted his ears.
That's weird,
he said.
Dispatch, do you read?
Static.
What's going on?
Grace asked.
Radio isn't getting through,
he told her.
It's okay. I can use the cell phone.
Sean stepped outside again and took the cell phone from his pocket. Without looking, he dialed the number that would connect him to emergency services. After a few moments, he still had not heard the familiar ringing. He looked at the phone.
Damn,
he said before putting the phone back into his pocket.
Now what?
Grace asked.
No service at all,
he told her.
Ugh, so what does protocol say to do now?
He turned and looked down the empty road. Not a headlight or streetlight could be seen in either direction. There was no farmhouse or home anywhere nearby.
I guess it means that I walk back to where that turnoff was and get help from the highway patrol,
he told her.
What am I supposed to do?
She asked, a flutter of nervousness in her voice.
You stay here and try to keep the passengers from leaving the bus. Tell them it isn't safe this time of night around here,
he told her. She looked around at the barren roadway and said,
What could possibly be out here that isn't safe?
Just do it,
he said. Retrieving the flashlight from the driver's stow, he once again let the passengers know what was going on and that he would be back with help very soon. Grace sat in her designated seat and watched the rearview mirror as Sean disappeared into the darkness. For a while, she could see the light bobbing up and down as the driver walked down the road. She watched until it became too small to see. "Miss!" Grace looked up and saw a middle-aged man standing in front of her.
Yes?
Now, I understand that we shouldn't leave the bus, but I sure could use a stretch. I don't think it would harm anything if we were allowed to stay near the bus on the side of the road. Do you?
He asked. She thought about it for a moment and finally agreed. People grumbled, gathered a few things, and began to exit the bus. A few stayed in their seats, getting as comfortable as possible. Many tried using their own cell phones, but quickly found out that there was no service.
Anybody know what happened?
A young lady asked. She was in her 20s and heading home from college for a visit.
Oh, just a flat tire,
an old man of 70 told her.
Happened to me one other time when I was travelling to Michigan. It took almost 3 hours to get going again.
Well, at least there's a bathroom on the bus, another lady said.
If you were a guy, you could just go over there to that tree,
the middle-aged man said laughingly.
What do you mean?
The college girl said.
I can squat.
This brought some laughter and the tension was eased. Grace began to count the passengers, making sure that she had the right number of bodies to account for when they finally were able to get on their way. 26, she told herself. No, that wasn't right. There should be 27 people. She recounted the 5 people that stayed on the bus and then began to count the heads that were milling around the shoulder of the road. Some were smoking, others were eating and drinking whatever snacks that they had brought with them. Mostly, they were talking to each other, joking about the trip, or just getting to know a fellow passenger. 26 again.
Someone is missing,
she announced. The other passengers stopped what they were doing and began to look around. Who is it? Someone asked.
My husband,
an older lady announced.
I'm sorry, I'm Melanie Pratt. My husband and I were traveling together. Anyway, he has a problem with small places like bus bathrooms, so he took that gentleman's advice and headed for the tree line. Well, as long as you know where he is,
Grace told her.
But that is just it,
Mrs. Pratt told her.
It has been far too long.
The middle-aged man stepped over to the 2 women and said,
Why don't I go and make sure that he is okay?
Would you?
Mrs. Pratt asked.
Oh, my pleasure, Marm,
he said, and headed for the tree line.
I do hope he's okay,
Mrs. Pratt said. Grace assured her with a small pat on the shoulder. 5 minutes went by, then 10, and there was no sign of either Mr. Pratt or the middle-aged man.
I wonder where they could be,
Mrs. Pratt asked. The college girl, Nancy, huddled closer to the door of the bus. She had already had a bad feeling about the trip before getting on it. Now, her feeling of doom was stronger.
Maybe I should go and see what's up,
a young man of 20 said.
Maybe,
Grace told him.
You should stay closer to the bus.
It was already too late as the young man jogged to the tree line. Grace watched intently as the young man went into the dense thicket of trees. The bright moonlight helped her see to the trees, but past them there was only darkness. By now, Grace and 24 sets of eyes were peering into the night towards the trees, waiting for 3 of their fellow passengers to emerge. The minutes ticked by without anyone saying a word. The young man, Bill Connors, had looked back through the trees and saw the group watching him. He began looking around the wooded area, using his cell phone as a flashlight. He walked softly, not wanting to scare anyone if they were busy doing something like pissing on a bush. He walked further and saw the old man first.
Hey! Everyone wants to know...
He stopped in mid-sentence. The old man was there, at least part of him was. His head was nearly decapitated, and his lower torso was missing. As Bill started to turn, he looked up into the trees and immediately wished that he hadn't. The first man who had gone looking for Mr. Pratt was hanging by his neck, his eyes bulging out of their sockets as droplets of blood fell from the dead man's cheeks.
Jesus!
Bill said as he started to run for the bus. Grace saw Bill first, bolting from the trees and running towards them. He was waving maniacally and screaming something.
Maybe we need to get back on the bus.
Grace said.
What about my husband?
Mrs. Pratt said. Grace finally heard what Bill was saying.
Get on the goddamn bus!
Grace watched as the spear burst from Bill's chest, stopping him in mid-stride. A look of terror and surprise crossed the young man's face as blood began to spill from his open mouth. A moment later, Bill was dragged back into the trees. Nancy screamed, which was all the goading anyone needed as they piled headlong into the bus's narrow door. Mrs. Pratt was tripped and died instantly as her head was slammed into the first step of the bus. Another woman was trampled on by a large man and 2 other girls, her throat crushed. Grace tried to keep everyone calm, but it was no use. There was simply no way to control that many people when they had just witnessed the brutal murder of one of their own. Another man was thrown out the driver's window when the man behind him felt that he was taking too long in getting onto the bus. He, in turn, was trampled to death by 2 other passengers as they scrambled for their seats. Eventually, everyone made it. Grace did a quick count and realized that there were now only 20 people on the bus and 1 dead body in the aisle.
What in the hell was that?
The question had come from Barry Reynolds, a businessman from Atlanta who was taking his first vacation in 10 years. He was stocky, in his early 40s, with brown hair and an air of superiority that no one liked.
Please, sir.
Grace tried to tell him.
I don't know what happened.
A boy was killed, damn it!
Maynard Jefferson, another college student, announced to everyone on the bus not only what had happened, but that the same thing could happen to all of them. This did not alleviate the fear that was growing on the bus.
So what do we do?
Nancy asked. Grace sat in one of the empty seats. Her strength was suddenly drained away, and she realized how very tired she was.
We sit here and wait for Sean to come back with help,
she told them. Nancy sat in the rear of the bus, her legs folded up against her chest. Her mind kept replaying the murder of the young man coming from the trees, the way his chest exploded outward when a spear came through it. The look of horror and terror in the young man's face all haunted her.
You all right?
An older passenger sat opposite Nancy and introduced himself as William Norval. He went on to tell Nancy that he was retired from the Navy and that this was his first real vacation in many years. He continued to talk about the weather, the state of the government, the prospects of fishing while trying to keep busy, all in the form of trying to keep Nancy from going insane. Nancy only half listened, catching a word or 2, all the time watching the window and the small red dot that seemed to hover in mid-air. It seemed to hypnotize her, lulling her until the only thing that she could see was the small red dot. She realized that the man had asked her a question. She finally looked up at him. Her eyes saw the small red dot on the man's forehead and realized that it was the same dot that was floating outside the window. She was about to say something to the smiling man when his forehead disappeared in a shattering explosion of blood and brains, covering her own face. The body slumped forward. Nancy screamed as 3 more passengers were shot dead.
Everybody get down!
Maynard said as he dove for the floor. Just behind him, a window shattered from the bullet, covering him in glass shards. Grace huddled in the floor near the driver's seat. She had wanted to scream loud, but no sound would come from her throat. She thought that if she remained silent, she might survive. The bullet stopped, and everything grew silent again. Maynard slowly lifted himself up, seeing the lifeless eyes of one of the young women staring directly at him. He felt the warm blood oozing onto his clothes from the dead.
"Stay down, you idiot!"
Barry ordered.
"Maybe he's out of ammo,"
Another man crouched down said.
"He's out of his mind, that's what he's out of,"
Maynard said. Carefully he rose just high enough to look out toward the tree line. He let his eyes get used to the darkness and tried to determine if anyone was moving, perhaps creeping toward the bus, ready to kill any survivors.
"What in the hell is going on?"
Nancy whispered.
"I don't know,"
Maynard told her.
"Maybe it's some terrorist attack." "Hey, Maynard,"
A man asked.
"Yes?" "I'm Stan Wilson,"
He told him, still crouched as low as he could get.
"Why don't we rush this nutcase?" "Be my guest,"
Maynard said.
"We can't just sit here and die, can we?"
Barry asked.
"So what do you suggest?"
Stan asked.
We wait for the driver,
Grace said, finally finding her voice.
"Well, where the hell is he?"
Barry asked.
getting help.
She said, although he had been gone for a long time. By her estimation, they had only travelled down the lonely road for about 3 miles before the tyres blew out. He should have been back by now, she thought to herself.
"You can bet that I'm going to sue,"
Barry said.
"Let's just survive first, okay?"
Maynard said.
"Right now, we are sitting ducks if we don't do something,"
Stan said.
"Grace, do you think this bus will run?"
There are 2 very blown tires on the side, but I guess we could ride on them,
She said.
"Fine, I'll drive,"
Stan said. Nancy began to cry, and another girl, Janet Carlton, began to hold and console her. Janet introduced herself to everyone and held Nancy in her arms as Nancy let go of the tears.
"I have an idea,"
Maynard said.
"It will mean getting out of the bus and opening the cargo hatch."
No!
Nancy screamed. Janet patted Nancy softly and asked,
What's the idea?
"I have a gun,"
Maynard said. Grace furrowed her brow and said,
How the hell did you get a gun on board?
"Well, it isn't the airport, is it?"
Maynard said.
"So how do you propose we get out of the bus?"
Stan asked. Maynard thought a moment and said,
"You drive the bus just enough to turn it around. And if you think it might get us out of here, great. Otherwise, just turn the bus to where that side isn't facing the tree line. Maybe I can get out a window and get to the gun."
Sounds like a plan to me, Barry said. Nancy, Grace, Barry, Janet, and Maynard sat toward the back of the bus while the other 11 passengers stayed on the floor near the front of it. Stan made his way to the driver's seat, checking to make sure that no one else was hurt or perhaps dead. The first thing that he did was to make sure that the keys were in the ignition. With a relieved sigh, he turned the key and thanked whatever great being was out in the cosmos that the engine started. A quick check to make sure that he knew halfway what he was doing, he slowly put the bus into gear. As Stan looked up, he saw passengers begin to raise up and push forward towards him, as if this would help the progress of the bus. He smiled until he looked out the front window, spattered with blood and gore. The head of the driver crashed through the front window and landed on Stan's lap.
Jesus!
He exclaimed as his foot hit the gas, making the bus lurch. 11 people were thrown forward. Grace and the others were thrown to the floor, an act that saved their lives for the moment. The bus stalled and the engine died. Stan tried to push the head off of him and noticed the strange object that was jammed into the mouth.
Look out!
He screamed as a grenade blew the head apart, killing Stan instantly, along with 2 other passengers. Some of the passengers, for no other reason than the human survival instinct to get away from something that can harm you, began to file out of the door of the bus. All 9 of them were cut down one by rifle fire like something from a carnival shooting gallery in a nightmare. Grace, Maynard, Nancy, Barry and Janet stayed on the floor of the bus until the shots concluded their terrible job. Waiting several minutes, they listened for any sign of life from the outside or the inside of the bus.
Well, that worked out,
Barry said.
Hey man, shut up,
Maynard told him.
We're trapped, and I don't hear you coming up with anything.
Oh, you mean like that Stan guy? Why don't we ask him how well we're doing?
Barry said, his voice edgy and hard.
Both of you stop it!
Grace told them with an authority that she didn't think that she had. Both men looked at her and waited.
Now, we all agree,
Grace began,
that we cannot just sit here.
Why the hell not?
Barry asked.
Someone has to come along soon, don't you think?
Well, no one has come along yet,
Janet pointed out.
so we know that whoever is doing this is somewhere in that tree line. We crawl out the window on the other side of the bus and head for the other tree line across the street,
She told them.
Then what?
Barry asked.
We make our way back to the main road,
She said, and even she thought it wasn't the best idea, but it was the only thing that she could come up with.
Well, I could still try to get my gun,
Maynard told them.
I think I have a better idea,
Barry said, and started searching his pocket. He pulled out a white handkerchief.
You are not going to do what I think you're going to do,
Janet asked. Without a word, Barry crawled over the dead bodies to his fellow passengers, blood soaking into his clothes and the smell of death filling his nostrils. He crawled out of the door and fell heavily onto the pavement. He waved the white cloth into the air above his head before standing up.
Hey, you there, the ones in the trees,
He yelled out.
listen, whatever you want, it's yours.
He began to walk toward the tree line, waving the white flag of surrender in front of him.
No one else needs to get hurt. You don't have to kill anyone. If you just want the luggage, it's yours.
Nancy, Grace, Janet, and Maynard raised up just enough to see. Each held their breath and hoped that this would not end the way that they knew it might.
Can you hear me?
Barry asked, his voice booming. He tried to see past the tree line, looking for any movement.
Look, I have about $3,000.
He said as he pulled out his wallet and laid it on the grass.
It's yours, and anything else you can find on the bus, just let us go. We can walk away, and you can take anything you want. We won't say anything. Hell, we don't even know what you look like.
Barry waved the handkerchief again, but there was still no movement. More importantly, there was no gunfire.
Okay,
He said.
we're gonna go now.
Barry turned back to see the 4 others looking out of the window. He smiled and began to motion them to get out. The bullet hit him in the back and made a rather large hole in his chest. Crimson red began to spurt out of him as he looked down at the fatal wound. His hand, still holding the white cloth above his head, fell to his side. He dropped to his knees and looked up at the terrified eyes of the witnesses to his demise. With another sound of gunfire, his head exploded and his body fell forward. Janet screamed as more gunfire shattered windows and hit the side of the bus. The others crouched down again, trying not to get hit. After a few moments, the night was silent again. It was at that moment they heard the siren. Officer Neil Patterson saw the disabled bus about a mile away. He hit his lights and sirens and pulled up behind it. Trying his radio, he realized that there was only static.
Huh, that's weird,
he muttered. Taking out his cell phone, he tried to call dispatch, but again, there was no signal. He looked and took in the scene. Checking his gun, he got out of the car.
Anyone around?
He called out. He first saw the body of Barry lying in a pool of blood before he pulled out his gun.
Get the hell out of here!
He turned and saw the 4 figures, 3 women and 1 man, yelling at him, waving their arms and pointing towards the tree line. Maynard stumbled over the dead and got to the door of the bus.
Get your ass in here!
He yelled to the patrolman.
What the hell happened? Use your fucking eyes and get the hell in here!
Maynard yelled again. The bullet entered the ear of the patrolman only 3 feet from Maynard. The look of the officer was one of surprise as his body slumped to the ground.
God damn it!
Maynard said, and fell back as more gunfire peppered the doorway.
We have to get out of here!
He yelled to the girls.
How?
I'm going for the cop's gun,
he said.
You girls run out the door when I start firing and get to the other side of the bus. After that, run for the patrol car.
Well, then what are you going to do? Janet asked.
Meet you there,
he said. It all happened faster than what Maynard thought it would. He positioned himself just beside the door of the bus. The 3 girls crouched behind him, ready to run. There was a slight lull in the barrage of gunfire, and Maynard leapt out of the door, scrambling toward the dead officer. He wrestled the gun out of the dead hand and fired once towards the trees.
Go!
Grace yelled. The 3 girls made their way around the front of the bus as bullets began to hit around them. They travelled the length of the bus and made it towards the rear, waiting for Maynard to return fire. A minute went by, and they thought that perhaps Maynard had been hit. Grace heard the distinct fire of Maynard as the gun went off. At that moment, she pulled the other 2 girls away from the bus and toward the patrol car.
Only a few feet, Janet thought. Just a few feet, and we will make it,
she told herself, but everything was moving in slow motion.
Ah!
She felt the bullet catch her midsection, tearing into her stomach and intestines. She turned and saw Nancy's cheek disappear in a burst of red, making Nancy fall into her, pinning her to the ground.
No!
Grace yelled as she crouched behind the patrol car. Maynard watched the rifle shots and the white light explode from the trees. Using the flash as a reference point, he emptied the gun into the tree line, spreading his shots as far an angle as he could. When the gun clicked, silence filled the air. Grace yelled for him.
I'm okay,
he yelled back.
Just stay where you are.
Maynard looked and saw something emerge from the tree line.
You're kidding,
he muttered, as he saw what appeared to be a white piece of cloth tied to the end of a rifle. It waved once back and forth before it fell to the ground. Maynard pulled himself to his feet, checking first to make sure there were no extra holes in his body, and began to jog toward the tree line. As he got closer, he slowed down, wondering what exactly he would find. He had not expected to see what he came across. "Dear God," he said as he looked down at the maniacal killer who had taken the lives of over 20 people. He slowly walked back toward the bus. In the distance, he could hear another siren heading towards them. By the time he found Grace still huddled behind the first patrol car, the other vehicle had arrived. "What's going on?" the officer said. Within 10 minutes, the area was swarmed with police, fire, and rescue officials. Body bags were being laid out in a grotesque line of death along the side of the road, each filled with the remains of the passengers. "Are you okay?" Maynard asked Grace. They were both sitting on the bumper of the ambulance, each wrapped in a warm blanket, their faces bathed in the glow of the flashing lights.
No,
she answered.
I don't think that I will ever be okay again.
A detective named Mason walked over to them. He was in his mid-40s, but looked so much older, the lines of his haggard face more pronounced than he would have liked them. He wasn't sure exactly how to interview the two survivors of the massacre, but he knew that he would have to ask the very hard questions.
We, found out why the radios and cell phones wouldn't work,
Detective Mason began.
It took a little while, but one of the deputies found a device up in the tree that blocks radio and cell phone signals. It looks like it was homemade. We also found enough guns and ammunition to start World War III, along with several explosive devices.
"Do you know who he is?" Maynard asked.
No idea,
the detective answered.
Nobody seems to know where he came from or who he is.
The detective looked at the face of Maynard and asked,
"Are you okay?"
Maynard looked up at the detective and said, "Would you be if you had just killed a 10-year-old boy?"
No, sir,
he answered.
I guess I wouldn't be. Just remember, though, that 10-year-old boy killed a lot of people and was trying to kill you. I know that isn't much to hang on to, and this nightmare will probably follow you for the rest of your life, but try to get past this.
Grace asked.
So what happens now?
Well,
the detective answered,
we start an investigation. We have your names and addresses, so there won't be a need for you to hang around. I have a patrolman who can drive you to town. I understand the bus company is sending a special car for both of you to take you wherever you might be going.
Patrolman Reynolds, as if on cue, walked up to the detective.
Don't worry, folks,
the patrolman said.
I'm a very careful driver.
Grace smiled up at the young man and noticed what appeared to be a small tear on the cheek of the officer. She dismissed it immediately, for she herself had felt like crying for the people that had been killed. She felt like crying for the young maniac who had taken the lives of so many. At that moment in time, she just felt like crying. Patrolman Jason Reynolds escorted his passengers to his car. Making sure that everyone was buckled in, he pulled away from the massacre.
Must have been pretty rough for you two,
he said. Maynard agreed. Yes, it had been pretty rough.
You know,
Reynolds said,
I never thought that Tim could get out of the basement. Apparently I was wrong.
Grace looked up and stared at the back of the head of the patrolman. Maynard had only half heard what had been said, but something in his mind told him that he should be paying more attention.
No one knows about my little brother,
the patrolman continued.
Our mother died when he was born, and by the time he was 3, my father committed suicide.
Dad always said that my brother was very special, that no one must know about him. Well, he killed our mother. Well, by the time he was 4, he was killing all kinds of things. Birds, cats, mice, even a few snakes. Oh, I had him hidden away in the basement, and I was sure that he couldn't get out. Guess I was wrong.
Grayson Maynard, wide-eyed with fear, listened as the patrolman droned on.
I suppose that I need to do something about little Tim's death. I understand that you two got him. I'm really sorry that he got out. I'm sorry that I'm going to have to take care of you two.
Grayson Maynard watched as patrolman Jason Reynolds pulled his car over to the side of the road. They watched as Jason Reynolds removed his service revolver. Fear held them in its grip, strangling any sound that they may have been able to make.
I wasn't the best brother in the world, you see,
Jason Reynolds told them, pointing the gun at them.
I really should have taken better care of him.
Without another word, Jason Reynolds pulled the trigger twice.
Oh, for you, Tim,
Jason said as he placed the revolver into his own mouth.
Epilogue. The butler did it.
Have you heard any good books lately? Audiobooks from Winslow Swan, now available on Spotify. If you'd like to support us, visit our merchandise store. T-shirts, caps, mugs, and so much more. Visit doorwaytonightmare.com today.